And they very carefully called the press, or the press found out about it, and they measured it, and they said it was very ornate. The walls were 18 inches thick, made of brick, and there was a space between the walls of 8 feet, large enough to put Lincoln's casket and Willie's in there too. And the ornate parts were still, you could see some of the wings that had been there on the building. And so they dug right on through it. And in the 1970s, I don't have the exact date for you, but I talked to Mal Hildebrand, who was in charge of those matters in that time. They were running a second ditch across there, and they struck it again. So the unused tomb is still underground at the current Capitol site, you see. Well, I thought that is so unusual, but the thing that I was impressed with, as I said, that we missed by one vote. one lucky vote kept the body of Lincoln entombed in Springfield, Illinois. It's been a great tourist attraction, I'm sure. And I was thinking of when Lincoln spent about the last 18 days, not quite the last, but he had been about 18 days down on the River Queen, visiting with Grant, watching the end of the war. And he comes back up the Potomac River on the 9th of April, and he has with him a party of friends that Mrs. Lincoln had brought down. Among those hangers-on was the Marquis de Chambrun from France. And he writes letters to his wife and also keeps a diary. And as they come up the Potomac River, they pass Mount Vernon. And the Marquis said to Lincoln, he said, as George Washington has made Mount Vernon so famous and as a great tourist site, I predict that Springfield, Illinois will be likewise a great tourist site. Well, it took us a long time until many of the movers and shakers of Springfield now have those two marvelous monuments there. We not only have the tomb and the home and so forth and the old state capitol, but we have that marvelous library and museum. So Lincoln never replied to the Marquis, but Lincoln was a very modest man, in a quiet way, of course. As John Hay said, no great man is truly modest, but Lincoln did not agree that with him publicly and openly that he would be a great tourist attraction. That certainly has come to pass. We certainly have a great tourist attraction coming into Springfield from many different countries. And in this last February 7, when the Abraham Lincoln Academy decided that they would pick outstanding scholars from around the world, and they settled on 30. And indeed, we did have the Lincoln scholars from around the world in one spot, 30 of us there, privileged few. So the fact that we have Lincoln's tomb there is certainly a great privilege to us and to the state of Illinois. I imagine they're interested in the taxes too that it brings in and so forth. Did any of you ever realize that there was a tomb there on the Capitol grounds when you passed through? I just hope that nobody gets up a plan when I publish my final paper to excavate that and make that a tourist site. It's been cut through twice, and I'm sure it would have to have a lot of reconstruction on it and so forth. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you have maybe questions to ask, and I will try and answer them if I can. Or what? Do you have any questions about Lincoln? Yes, yes.
Wayne, are there any photos extant of that tomb?
No, there are no photos extant, but the mayor, Dennis, being somewhat of a draftsman and a builder, he kept his own plans for it, which Irwin was going to do, of course. So yes, we do have the sketch of it, and we do know that when the correspondent was there in 1867, he could see that Lincoln had already been carved on the stone above it. So yeah, we do know what it looks like, and also we do know what the temporary tomb out at Oak Ridge on the brow of that hill looks like, same way we have a sketch. This same correspondent that came from Cincinnati, he described that temporary tomb better than I've ever seen it described. He said it had sod on the roof. It was a temporary structure, but it almost looked like the same plan that had been used there for the Capitol grounds tomb. And so we do know what those two look like. So, yes.
Wayne, is it true that there is no photograph of the Lincoln train in Springfield, the funeral train?
Oh, my. We have a lot of different pictures in a lot of different states and different stations, but I know of none when it comes into Springfield. Time exposure, I'm always amazed at how many they did get of the Lincoln funeral train when you think everything has to be rather quiet for a number of seconds before you can take a picture in those days. And I imagine that nobody attempted to get that train as it came in. I know of none. I know there have been some recent books on that funeral train, but I don't recall seeing any that showed it in Springfield. Well, we promised to get you so you can get to your next assignment. I'm sure you have some good papers this afternoon. You have any more questions or anything? Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.